Welcome to the seventh session, where we use ancient wisdom for creating the new global goal of education, a well being curriculum. We use IKS's ways of knowing from Pratyaksh and Anuman, and we now take it to Upaman in this session. The Upaman, that is comparison between IKS and CKS. Maslow gives a need hierarchy for humans. IKS gives a path for rising in it, which was missing in the current knowledge system. You have pondered over Maslow's need hierarchy in the previous session. Can you compare knowledge with its practice? Why, despite such knowledge, is society suffering social pain? OECD concludes that education can prevent it. How? We believe that humans do use inference in comparison or anumana. Does the point of view to infer and compare need a change? The current point of view is creating social pain. Can a different point of view prevent it? We all agree that the first thing we need is food, clothing, and shelter. It is also true that safety and security needs come next. Once these are met, humans need love and belongingness. After all these needs are fulfilled, prestige becomes important. After that, the desire for self-actualization arises. The conclusions reached by OECD about the nature of prosperity over the last 150 years shows that self-actualization needs are not being expressed. Greed and acquisitiveness has led to widening income disparities globally. According to Maslow, increasing levels of prosperity should have brought them down. But this is not happening. OECD says education should create well-being. What changes in education can make it happen? Take 5 to 10 minutes to compare what OECD wants and what the world has witnessed in the last 150 years. Using comparison, write down why many humans are unable to rise in Maslow's need hierarchy despite being educated. Give your ideas how education can inculcate concepts to enable it. Is the failure of a reductionist dream, the failure of scientific materialism and sense perception the cause of human inability to rise in the need hierarchy? Is a sense perception-led view distorting inference and comparison done by the current knowledge system? Why could current knowledge system's use of inference and comparison not lead to well-being that IKS evidence will demonstrate? Why is quantum physics' reality clear to students of IKS, but it is difficult to put into practice by current knowledge system students? The last session interpreted the Vedas using Sri Aurobindo's hymns to the mystic fire, etc. The Vedic fire with a large base and a pointed top sometimes looks like the shape of Maslow's need hierarchy. The question remains whether the natural desire of the fire to rise up can fulfill the individual and social needs for humans to rise in their needs to actualize human potential. If so, how to achieve it? This session will conclude with a hypothesis that answers this question. IKS's last way of knowing is Pratyaksh Pramana. If we are preparing for that, this is what is the goal of IKS, to prepare everybody for Pratyaksha Pramana. Here, inferential knowledge, when compared with the world's reality, reveals the truth of humans and the universe together. This is the basis of IKS's search. Its three schools of thought, duality, qualified non-dualism, and Advaita, lead this journey. When Advaita guides such search, duality of the world is easy to live in. The last session, after discussing the Vedas, ended with the threefold approach of IKS of Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita schools. We found that Vishishtadvaita school accepts the reality revealed by quantum physics and also accepts the reality based on sense perception, which current knowledge system uses. Hence, a curriculum design using its concepts could be a good bridge between current and IKS, the Indian knowledge system, which is truly an international knowledge system. When the guide to comparison and inference is not sense perception but such a search for well-being, our goal is achievable. From this threefold understanding of Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita, how do we relate to the threefold understanding of the Vedas? I'm going to raise a hypothesis here. The Vedas see a unity between the microcosm and the macrocosm. They also state that ideas of righteous conduct are eternal, endless. Similarly, they discover creation too is endless. These are the three concepts, that there is a unity between the microcosm and macrocosm, that the ideas of righteous conduct are eternal and endless, and that creation too is endless. Can we then make a hypothesis that we can understand all ideas of righteous conduct in the Vedas by understanding its microcosm? One mantra only? If so, which one to choose? Veda Vyasa classified the eternal ideas of righteous conduct given in mantras. The very first mantra in the very first collection of Vedas, the Rig Veda, is dedicated to Agni, fire. Ancient Indian wisdom looks at the source and then the form in creation. The mantra is also a form, only the formation is of words. Without looking at the mantra, can we just look at the source it glorifies? All of us live in creation. What secret of the source of the creation the very first mantra could be revealing? We can speculate. I will share my speculation and you can think over yours at the end of the session and maybe write about it at the beginning of the next. The first mantra of the first Veda praises fire, Agni, one of the 5 elements enabling creation. Fire is the only element whose quality is to rise up. IKS makes human consciousness rise above sense perception and lower order needs. All IKS texts have deep meaning. Comprehending the different layer of meanings requires the use of the mind and an experience beyond it too. Just as school exams improve our worldly knowledge, IKS tests improve the way we experience life. They test first the depth of thought. Secondly, they test the experience one is capable of reaching. The third test is tough, living in the experience always. It requires practice. The revelations given here encourage it. As mentioned earlier, IKS uses Aparavidya to teach Paravidya. This process is demonstrated by the first mantra of the very first Veda. Let's see how. Paravidya deals with wisdom that is beyond sense perception. Aparavidya teaches what the senses can comprehend. A Vedic sacrifice signifies a sacrifice of 6 inner enemies: greed, pride, envy, etc. These may result from the misuse of sense perception. Such a sacrifice forms the link between para and aparavidya. To understand water, for example, we found the formula H2O. We discovered how things combined in creation. What creates the link between hydrogen and oxygen? Sharing electrons may do it. What creates the link in the mind to transition from sense perception reality to quantum reality? Ancients used fire to signify this link. The Aparavidya deals with the visible constituents of the universe. The seers of IKS discovered that the process of creation took place with the emergence of the 5 elements from one another. These elements were ether or Akash, wind, fire, water and earth. Which one is visible outside the human body to the senses? Fire. Water and earth elements are acknowledged by many as the components of the human body itself. This is one dimension of the importance of fire in a fire sacrifice. It is the link between the world visible to the eyes and the world that remains invisible to the human eyes. Can we view it as a bridge across two worlds? Then who travels on this bridge? In the Vedic sacrifices, the mantras are sound, but sound and is the movement of the higher element, that is air. However, the same air element keeps moving around the human body that has been declared dead. So where is life coming from if it is not coming from air alone? Life is enabled by breath or prana. It must be coming from an element higher than air, which is akash or ether. This is the space beyond which the source resides. The mantras, called mathematical formulae by some Western researchers, use the prana to create vibrations in the air or sound, sacrificing to the fire to return the consciousness back to the ether element. The idea of such an exercise is to raise the level of consciousness. This may be another dimension of the fire sacrifice. What could be another third dimension of the fire sacrifice? Just as the first dimension lay in the word fire, the third lies in the word sacrifice. It is clear from the first two dimensions why this sacrifice is to the element fire. The question arises, what is to be sacrificed? What has to be burnt? What has to be given away? The experience of the seers and our daily experience shows that humans get attached to the form that the senses perceive. These forms may be jada or inert, or with chaitanya or consciousness. If the purpose is to seek the truth, are such attachments justified? Quantum physics declares that these forms do not in reality exist as they appear. If these forms are not the truth, IKS says, why get attached to them? Therefore, the first thing to be sacrificed are the attachments. These attachments may be given away symbolically with the deeper meaning echoing in the heart. The attachment to the outer form is given away using another outer form, while the inner attachment is given away from the inner world, the human heart. Thus, there is an inner fire that accepts this inner sacrifice. It is the fire of tapas, or strict regulation of emotion and thought processes, that leads to inner peace and is born of faith. Charity accompanies such a fire sacrifice to put in action the thought of sacrifice. Having attempted to raise a hypothesis on the fire sacrifice, let us look at the very first mantra of the first Veda dedicated to fire. We pray to the fire not only for the functions it performs. These functions are to build a bridge that helps transcend our consciousness from sense perceptions. They also include building an inner awareness about sacrificing the transient truth to attain the unchanging truth. To attain this truth, human effort is required. The fire sacrifice only catalyzes it. It requires self-regulation, righteous conduct, or dharma. We pray to the fire not only for what it does, but also for what it intrinsically is. It removes the darkness of ignorance, that is its intrinsic quality. It is self-effulgent and does not depend on an external source to give light. It is that form of primal energy that we can see and experience both. We believe that energy pervades everything, for without energy, even the electrons in the atom will not move. Fire is the visible evidence of energy. If the external world that we see with our eyes open is activated by energy, what happens if we close our eyes? Is energy present inside too? We recognize breath or prana as coming from outside to activate our body and mind. This is the movement of air. It comes in as cool breath. In our study of elements in IKS, movement of air creates fire. If so, where does it reside in the body? The first evidence that it activates fire inside may be in the exhalation of the same cool breath. The breath that is inhaled is cool, but the exhaled breath is warm. That inner fire that is generated activates all organs of the body. It also awakens a lot of attachments and desires. These are to be exhaled after the inner sacrifice. IKS finds that it gets activated inside to give the fire that digests the food. It resides in the tongue as sharp retorts, in the eye that gives angry looks, etc. IKS discovered that all elements have to be used within restraints. So we pray to fire to restrain its use within the boundaries of righteous conduct in our daily actions. Thus, we can view the prayers to the elements, the sacrifices, etc. in this context. The path to rise in Maslow's need hierarchy is by changing energy levels through education and practices, both inner and outer. What is the point of identifying the movement of energy and directing it upwards towards the elevating ether instead of downwards towards the sense objects? The idea is to foster a change in energy levels within the human. What gets burned by fire? Attachments to the sense objects creates unnecessary or harmful desires. These get burnt, leading to elimination of greed. When attachment is reduced, the need to fulfill desires that harm others recedes. With such desires, anger has gone, anger melts. The false sense of self-importance or ego slowly dissipates. The I, me, mine focus transforms, and the vision that sees the unity of social good and the individual good together gets enabled. Human actions thus are transformed. Energy now gets redirected upwards to higher goals and not downwards towards the 6 inner enemies. Attachments bind energy to sense objects. Transmitting energy upwards frees it. IKS enables change in energy levels with which humans operate. It believes that change in energy level impacts and activates change in thought processes. When thought is elevated, the 6 inner enemies of desire or lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego or pride, and jealousy are removed. Human potential is free to be realized. It shines like the self-effulgent sun, which is worshipped here. The self-realization is called self-actualization in modern psychology. The energy or fire within is the instrument for transformation. The elimination of attachment leads to rising in Maslow's need hierarchy. Modern psychology gives no route to rise in the need hierarchy. IKS lays down the path clearly. The IKS route of 6 philosophies suit individual attitudes. Sense perception is CKS's first way of knowing, the current knowledge system's first way of knowing. The 4 prominent ways of knowing of IKS emerge from its 6 philosophies, which have been repeated earlier in the last session: Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Purvamimamsa and Uttarmimamsa. The IKS texts and philosophies are all different routes to self-actualization. Nyaya is the philosophy that is the nail used by all its other philosophies. So let's talk of Nyaya philosophy now. Britannica.com describes all the 6 philosophies as being ultimately concerned with ending human suffering caused by the ignorance of reality. Liberation from ignorance happens only by the right knowledge. Nyaya is thus concerned, it concerns itself with the means to get the right knowledge. Nyaya philosophy gives the 4 methods of investigation that we shared earlier and are the basis of designing the structure of our interactions. Number 1, Pratyaksha, that is direct perception, sense perception. Number 2, Anuman, inference. Number 3, Upaman, comparison. And number 4, Shabda, which is sound, Shabda Praman, that is the revealed truth. The IKS approach is that all these findings about matter pertain to using only the lower capacities of the human mind. IKS findings are based on the study of the subtle overmind. They target to explore the supreme source from which all phenomena emerge. Hence, the findings need an elevated state of mind to explore that truth, comprehend it, and apply it in life. If the sense organs and sense perception is used to measure phenomena, human biology comprehends their working like a machine. A machine may have a zero error or may be prone to inaccuracy due to many other factors like the settings not being set properly, etc. Therefore, instead of relying on machines, the IKS states that sincere investigations from the heart are important. These investigations should be done in the best possible manner. Nyaya philosophy's foundational idea that sincere investigations from a heart full of quest of truth is the foundational idea of religions too. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is quoted as saying, and I quote, "Anything that man does, God wishes him to do well," unquote. This approach of Nyaya philosophy and IKS, in the experience of those who practiced it, transforms the human heart to seek excellence and fill it with goodness, which is our interpretation of divinity in this course. The investigations done with a heart full of humble sincerity and seeking excellence in its search for truth awakens the human conscience. The awakened human conscience can distinguish between what is right and what is wrong, leading to self-discipline. Nyaya philosophy is also about searching for the truth using doubt and inference. For example, if cranes are present somewhere, we can infer that a water body may be nearby now. Similarly, one can draw an inference about there being a fire just by seeing smoke. From the swabhav, that is natural traits, it concludes that one can make out the swaroop, the real form. This is the use of the methodology of Anuman in IKS. The idea of Upaman or comparison as a methodology is that many things cannot be easily understood. A way of understanding them is to compare them to things that can be easily understood. By studying the apparent reality and the empirical reality, we can infer the transcendent reality. The apparent reality is through sense perception. The empirical reality is given by quantum physics. What do we infer by using them to comprehend the transcendent reality? Have we succeeded in doing this? This course will make an attempt to do it. Suppose we see all human beings as powered by the same ocean or source that gives life-giving breath to all. View that source as an ocean. The ocean is the transcendent reality we cannot comprehend. What we see as empirical reality is the foam that originates from the apparent reality of the waves. The apparent reality of waves is changing. This is the way IKS investigates the ocean, the source from where all human beings emerge. From the ocean, you see the waves which are changing, and from the waves you see the foam, and the foam does not last. So, sense perception does not last. The waves are changing. Vishishtadvaita investigates that, and the ocean below the waves is silent, constant, it doesn't move. It is in Prashanti, which is what Advaita teaches. What is the source that makes a spinning top start spinning? IKS investigates the source that causes the dynamic equilibrium which happens because of rotation. It investigates the source using its ways of knowing and sources of knowledge. Shabda Praman or revealed truth is the highest among them. From time immemorial, the highest form of proof is the revealed truth, the Shabda Praman. Faith and religions emerged from it. Why was this faith shaken? Was it because its truth's dimensions were not comprehended by minds clouded by selfish desires? To be able to perceive this testimony, one must be properly attuned and extremely careful. It needs one to travel beyond the mind and the senses. Only at a stage of samanachit, mental equanimity, sound becomes the very form of truth. Nyaya Darshan declares that human conscience carries this sound within us. Thus, conscience is the best judge and can give justice. Conscience is beyond the mind, it is the vibration of life. The transcendent truth is all pervasive, all over. That's what IKS finds. It takes the form of a word in the human mind. The importance of the word is also acknowledged in the Holy Bible, where it states that, and I quote, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God," unquote. The origin of the words lies beyond the mind as the radiating transcendent truth. Then they originate in the mind as a vibration, a voice of the conscience that vibrates within oneself. The word is the materialization of body, which is changed to suit the situation, by humans. The word, the way you pronounce it changes. Hence, from radiation comes vibration, and from vibration comes materialization. The word that resonates as the voice of conscience is the vibration of truth from the all-pervasive radiating source of all creation. It is the Shabda Praman, the ultimate proof. IKS respects skepticism as a tool to gain knowledge, till the time you get the answer. However, once you have got the answer firmly, full faith is required. Even current knowledge system acknowledges faith as a way of knowing. It will be normal to raise skeptical questions here, in case you don't understand the idea of beyond sense perception and the concept of the word or Shabda Pramana. Even the Buddha asked us not to believe what he says until we experience it ourselves. Skeptical questions about a hidden source of creation or the hidden source of the word that can reverberate within us are expected, and we should not shy about raising them. A story is narrated here. Mix it with skepticism to see how your mental churn goes forward. Once upon a time, a monk, wearing his orange-colored robe, entered a village full of skeptics. Some of them had a habit of being very aggressive, filled with the desire to show their superiority. This gang of defiant youth challenged him to show them that the source whom he was adoring actually existed. And as he used the word God to describe the source, the temperature of their tone rose further. He said that he is not a liar and could address their questions. But before doing so, he asked for a cup of milk to rejuvenate himself after a long journey. The aggressive boys said that the milk from their village cows, that their village cows produce, gives them maximum butter without the help of the source or God that he believed in. When the milk was brought before the monk, he kept looking at it long and silently with increasing curiosity. He did not drink it. The youth became impatient for their answer. For this, he had to drink the milk first. Thus, their aggression kept increasing. The monk told them, "Wait a minute. All of you told me that there is butter in the milk. I am waiting for it to show. Now I find this cup doesn't have it, however hard I look into it. Are you telling the truth?" The aggressive youth laughed at his innocence. They said, "Silly man, don't rush to such absurd conclusions about us or the milk. Milk has butter in every drop. That is what makes it so nourishing. If you see it as a separate concrete entity, you have to boil the milk, cool it, add sour curd, Wait for some hours for it to curdle, then churn it and roll the butter that floats into a ball. The monk thanked them for telling him the way butter can be taken out from the milk. He said that he was glad that all of them knew that without following a proper procedure, butter cannot be separated from the milk. The fact that all of them had this knowledge, he said, made his task easy. For the task of finding the source or God or the concept of Shabda Pramana or the word is similar. You cannot keep staring at me and expect me to produce it for you. You cannot similarly keep staring at the world and expect the world to produce it for you. Just as the monk said, just as I have to do the effort to take out the butter from the milk, each of you have to do effort to get an experience of the source or hear the word. You may choose to call the source as God or Atma or Anantam. That is a matter of giving a name. You can choose any name you like because the source is also the source of all the names. This way, he explained that the source is in everything, every being and atom of the universe. It is because of this that all things exist and we can recognize separateness of things and enjoy them. To see the source as a concrete reality, an entity or a word requires you to adhere to a prescribed procedure, earnestly, strictly and sincerely. Then at the end of it all, you can experience the word or live in the experience of the source. Next, we go to Vaisheshika Darshan. We can relate it to sciences as well as social sciences like economics, etc. The Vaisheshika philosophy exhorts us to look beyond the mere appearance of things. It seeks to probe into the inner nature of substances. Its exponents used Shabda Pramana to propound that the universe is made of atoms, and that no two atoms are the same. The Vishesha, the particularity, lies in the difference that exists between one atom and the other. As each atom is Vishesh or particular, the system has been known as Vaishesha. The structure of arguments still now align with Vaisheshika findings that the universe is made of two entities, matter and the spirit. After profound investigation into the nature of matter, it declares the impermanence of matter and the permanence of the spirit. Hence, instead of pursuing knowledge of the transient and temporary, it sought truth of the spirit which will remain unchanged for eternity. The resultant findings of sage Kanada and others were shared with all. Vaisheshika explores the world of atoms to conclude the truth about matter. Matter and nature are reality, it finds. Only the form of matter changes. For example, mud and water are creation of the spirit, but they are both matter. The pot made out of mud and water may assume various shapes or even break and splinter, but the mud and water remain as the base. Hence, matter being unchangeable is reality. All forms of matter return to the 5 elements of nature that are unchangeable. For example, sound is of different kinds, but the primordial sound, Om, is unchanging. All the Saptswaras or the 7 distinct notes of the octave are vikaras or changed forms of the Omkara, the primordial sound, which is the unchanging truth behind all of them. Musical notes change, but the base remains the same. Similarly, the visible form and shapes keep changing, but the underlying matter and nature are both unchanging. The Vaisheshika philosophy finally affirms the permanence of the spirit as well as matter. It bases its conclusions on facts. It reveals the equality of man and woman, arguing that man and woman may differ in gender, but as humans they are one and the same. the male and the female are equally required for creation. It states that society will be in trouble when it does not accept this equality and attempts to diversify the essential unity in both men and women. It concludes that only if we do good to society can we expect good from society. Its investigations into the spirit concluded that though matter differs from substance to substance, the truth is that all these substances are diverse manifestations of the five elements. The deluded vision is responsible for our conviction of diversity. The spirit or unity of Atma harmonizes all matter. We are not able to see this truth. What is the cause of problems in human vision? It is that we cannot detach our sense perception from the gross to investigate the subtle. In case we are unable to do it, what is the nature of burden we will carry? And I quote, "For one who lacks intelligence and wisdom, detachment becomes a burden. For one who lacks knowledge, the body becomes a burden. For one who lacks selfless love, the mind becomes a burden." Unquote. Some salient points of Vaisheshika are: to become free from all these burdens, humans must develop discrimination. The control over senses to the extent possible enables discrimination. Discrimination enables understanding the truth or the basis of everything. Differentiating between the instrumental and the basis leads us to the truth. Mud and water are the basis of all pots of different shapes and sizes. The potter is the instrumental who uses mud and water. The five elements in nature are the basis of everything. The Vaisheshika philosophy propounded unity and harmony, not discord, by pointing out the essential unity among all. It appeals to all human beings not to fight over petty matters. It explains that there is enormous power in the microcosm. It can be harnessed by learning with discretion. We can use any of the Shad Darshans that appeal to our inner nature, but how to use them? IKS tells us to cleanse our mind. The importance of it can be captured in a story better. Once a great painter was asked by a king to execute a painting on the wall of his audience hall where he met the common public. He asked for a scene from an epic battle. The king knew that this is going to be a very tedious job requiring a very high degree of skill to execute the shapes of humans and horses and knowledge of light and shade. He and his ministers had seen the work of many painters before arriving at the decision to choose this master painter. However, the king was surprised when another painter came and asked for permission to execute the same painting on the opposite wall. He said he would, within the same time period as given to the master painter, do the job. Not only that, he said that on his side of the wall he will execute an equally grand painting. In fact, an exact replica of what the master painter's work is. He told the king that he will not see what the master painter is doing. To remove any doubt, he asked the king to hang a curtain between the two walls. On the date fixed for the opening of the paintings to be seen by the king, the curtain was removed. The king could not believe his eyes when he found an exact copy of the same scene from the epic battle down to the minutest detail. He closely studied the lines and curves. Then he examined the tints and tilts, light and shade. After much detailed examination, no difference was to be found. The ministers also failed to point out a single difference. Finally, the king asked the painter how he had done this fantastic work of copying perfectly. The artist said that he had not used any brush or paint. All that he did was to thoroughly polish the wall which was assigned to him. He kept polishing the wall. With continuous polishing, using his knowledge and technique, he was able to do it in such a way that it shone like a mirror. He revealed to the king that the duplicate painting was only a reflection of the original. Similarly, the way to study the Shad Darshan, the technique to apply it is to cleanse the mind and make it pure. The purity of intention in seeking the truth reflects the truth to perfection. Shabda Pramana reflects it using words that reflect Nyaya. Vaisheshika reflects it as atoms and Sankhya reflects it as numbers. These are different ways in which the sublime grandeur and beauty of the source may be reflected in our heart. The Shad Darshans are different ways of shining the mirror. One may ask, why not just one darshan? IKS believes that each person has individuality. This individuality investigates the truth, comprehends it, and applies the same truth differently. It says, Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The truth of, say, the mountain peak remains the same, irrespective of the direction you climb it from, and whether that direction has a forest or lake in its path. As per your inner nature, whichever path or journey appeals to you can be chosen. The end of the journey is the same source, the peak of the mountain. The only guide in this journey is a pure heart. We have covered Nyaya philosophy and Vaisheshika Darshan in this session and seen how IKS investigated the truth using them. The difference between IKS and current system lies in the nature of search and the nature of instruments used for the search. Current knowledge system uses sense perception as the primary instrument for search. This impacts the nature of findings. As phenomena in nature keep changing, there may be difficulty in finding stability in the conclusions. The human mind, when it is drawing unstable conclusions about the nature of oneself, the nature of humans, and the nature of nature, are unlikely to find mental peace and emotional well-being. The inability to do so has led to strife in society and conflict within individuals. Two philosophical techniques that have offered a way out for thousands of years have been shared. More will be shared in the next session. The number of techniques one knows is important, but also not so important in IKS. The most important thing is to practice them. This course lays a deep emphasis on practice. Every attempt is made to make all the lectures very short. A 5-minute slot at the end of this lecture is being given for silent sitting. This is to enable the participant to mull over what is said. Whatever has been heard should be repeated in the mind so that it gets absorbed. Just as sugar is stirred in a cup of tea or coffee with a spoon, use the spoon of silence to stir the sugar of Indian knowledge systems in your mind. It takes some time for the tea or coffee to become sweet. Patience is very important. The perspectives shared in the course will seem meaningful only if such silent sitting is done to mull over what has been said. Else, the half an hour spent in delivering the lectures will be a waste of time. We welcome you to undertake an inner journey during these 5 minutes. Only then will knowledge that is outside you will become wisdom inside you. The time allocated for this is actually 20 minutes, not 5 minutes. The time should be increased gradually. This is also a time for the mind to take rest. In case it cannot do that, mull over whether the voice of the conscience has guided you at any time in life till now. We accept challenges for the physical body in games. In a gym, we can have a 20 minutes plank challenge. We may exchange challenges on the quantity of food we can eat. Can we go beyond such challenges to the second step of the Indian knowledge systems? Can we see if the mind itself can take rest and maybe stop working? Can we explore what will happen if it becomes zero? Remember, it is not good to challenge the mind. It rebels and makes you do the opposite of what you want it to do. It is far simpler to observe the mind. For doing this, first the physical body should move as little as possible. Observe the mind as it tells the body to move. You are not telling the body to move, the mind is telling the body to move. Observe the mind. Move away from the mind and see what it is forcing the body to do. Watch the mind as if you are sitting on a fan at a distance. When you are at home, Shavasana in yoga is a good posture for this practice. Try to first silence the body, then the mind. For those who have mastered this, they can try the next method. When you think of nothing, can you experience love without giving it a shape of a thing like your favorite food or a thing that you want to own or the physical form of a person? Can it just be love without an emotion to a person or a thing? Can it be love for the sake of love? How do you experience loving yourself? The purpose of this course is to help you discover yourself, that loving being beyond the body and the mind.